Hello friends, welcome to the HFY Ode, where we bring you new science fiction stories, a new world, a new adventure. And yes, there is no robotic or AI voices here, only real human voices with real human touch. So let's start this journey, and please subscribe my channel if you like the stories and press the bell icon for the latest updates. Let's have a story. Okay.
They called us primitives, savages who'd barely crawled out of our gravity well with chemical rockets and audacity. The consortium had 16 species, some who'd mastered fold space before we discovered fire. They watched us stumble into their perfect order like a drunk into a library. What they didn't know, what they couldn't know, was that we'd spent 10,000 years perfecting one skill they'd forgotten existed. We knew how to miss everything that mattered and still hit exactly what we aimed for. The Valdres hung in orbit like a cathedral made of starlight and arrogance. Cale pressed his forehead against the observation port, watching Earth shrink behind them, all that blue and green and brown compressed into something he could cover with his thumb. First human delegation to the Galactic Consortium. Historic. Terrifying. He'd thrown up twice already. Stop looking at it. Commander Sarah Chun didn't glance up from her data tablet. You'll just make it worse. How are you not? Cale swallowed. We're in an alien spacecraft. Flying to alien space. To meet aliens. I'm aware. She swiped through another screen. I wrote the briefing documents he didn't read. The other 8 members of their delegation were scattered through the observation deck. Dr. Marcus Webb had his face practically welded to the opposite port, muttering equations. Lieutenant Yuki Tanaka sat cross-legged on the floor, somehow having convinced the ship's fabricators to produce what looked like actual coffee. Corporal James Jimmy Rodriguez was asleep. Just asleep. In an alien ship. Cale envied him. The door dilated with a sound like a sigh. Their consortium liaison flowed in. Cale still wasn't sure if the Volusians walked or poured themselves through space. Veldarkin had 12 syllables in their actual name, but they'd told the humans to call them Vel. Thoughtful. Or maybe they just got tired of watching human faces contort. Commander Chun. Vel's translation matrix turned their harmonic whistles into something almost like Mandarin. We approached the proving grounds. Your delegation will need to prepare. Sarah stood, and Cale watched the military snap into her spine. The things she did where she became a different person. Taller, somehow. What exactly are we preparing for? Vel's chromatophores rippled through colors Cale suspected weren't entirely translating. Embarrassment, maybe, or the Volusian equivalent of a wince. The Council requires demonstration. Of capability. You mean they want to see what we can do? Sarah's voice could have etched glass. The other species are concerned. You're very, well post. New. And your planet's recent unification was achieved through methods the consortium finds troubling. War, Marcus said from his window. They're politely horrified that we shot each other for 10,000 years before we stopped. Vel's colors confirmed it without words. So they want to show. Sarah crossed her arms. What kind? Combat trial. Diplomatic scenarios. Technical assessments. Vel's tone suggested they were reading from a list they found distasteful. Standard integration protocol. Usually takes between 6 months to 2 years, depending on the species' adaptability, and we'll do it in 3 weeks, Sarah said. The temperature in the room changed. Cale felt it. Everyone felt it. Commander, I must advise, the fastest successful integration on record was the Krell, and they required 4 months of 3 weeks. Sarah's smile was the kind that made Cale grateful she was on his side. We're human. We adapt fast or we die. Vel's colors went very still. As you wish. The proving grounds weren't grounds at all. More like a manufactured pocket of folded space anchored to nothing, containing everything. Cale stepped through the transition field, and his stomach decided to have opinions about the local physics. Not quite nausea, just wrongness. Like his inner ear was filing a complaint. The arena stretched forever and nowhere at once. Crystalline pillars erupted from geometric platforms that hung suspended in violet void. In the distance, if distance meant anything here, he could see other delegations. The Krell, massive and shelled, moving with the deliberate patience of continental drift. The Syrinx, so small Kale initially mistook them for drones, swarming in perfect mathematical formations. And others. So many others. 16 species. All of them had looked at Earth's first transmission, Voyager's golden record, ancient and naive and hopeful, and collectively decided humans were adorable primitives who'd probably kill themselves before becoming a real problem. Kale had read the assessments, the ones they'd thought were encrypted. Christ, Jimmy muttered beside him. We're the special ed class, aren't we? Remedial galactic studies, Yuki agreed. An amplified voice rolled through the arena, translated into every language simultaneously. Kale's brain tried to process it, and gave up, letting the translation matrix do the heavy lifting. Delegation from Sol. 3. Designation human. You will proceed to combat trial, Arena 7. Observers are gathering. Sarah didn't hesitate. She walked toward the designated platform like she owned it. The rest of them followed because that's what you did when Sarah-chan started walking. Arena 7 materialized as they approached. A circular platform, maybe 50 meters across, ringed with what Kale desperately hoped were non-lethal force fields. Weapons racks emerged from the surface, displaying technology that looked 3 parts science fiction to 1 part fever dream. Select your armaments, the voice instructed. You will face a standard combat scenario. Multiple opponents, varied terrain, limited resources. Defeat all hostiles or survive for 1 standard cycle. Kale moved toward the nearest rack. Energy weapons. Projectile weapons. Things that might have been weapons or might have been sculptures. He reached for something that looked gun-shaped. Don't. Marcus slapped his hand away. That's a mining tool. You'd vaporize yourself. He grabbed something else, sleeker, with obvious grips, and what had to be a trigger. This, probably. The others were arming up with similar uncertainty. Except Sarah, who'd picked up 3 weapons with the casual competence of someone who'd done this before, and Jimmy, who'd somehow found the alien equivalent of a shotgun and was cradling it like a beloved pet. 30 seconds, the voice announced. The arena changed. Crystalline pillars erupted from the floor, creating cover and corridors. The violet void dimmed, replaced by harsh angular shadows. Temperature dropped. Kale's breath misted. Spread out, Sarah ordered. Corners. Watch your fields of fire. Don't shoot each other. That would be embarrassing. They scattered. Kale found himself wedged behind a pillar next to Yuki, who was checking her weapon with the methodical calm of someone refusing to panic. You ever shoot anyone? Kale whispered. 3 people. Training accidents. Paintball. She didn't look at him. I'm a linguist. So that's a no. The arena's ambient sound cut out. Something moved in the shadows. The first hostile was elegant. That was Kale's primary thought as the thing uncoiled from behind a pillar, like liquid mercury, given homicidal intent. Sleek. 4-limbed. Fast. Kale raised his weapon, brain screaming contradictory instructions about pressure and aim and breathing, and it was already dead. Sarah had shot it. Once. Center mass. The thing collapsed with a sound like wind chimes breaking. Contact left. Marcus shouted. 2 more emerged. Different morphology. These were stockier, hexapadal, with what might have been armor or might have been skin. Kale couldn't tell the difference. Jimmy's shotgun spoke. The nearest one disintegrated into component molecules. The second one made it 3 steps before Yuki put 2 rounds through what Kale hoped was its head. Silence again. That's it. Jimmy sounded offended. That's the vaunted consortium combat trial. Wait. Sarah held up a fist. Listen. Kale listened. Heard nothing. Then heard everything. A subsonic vibration building in the floor, in his teeth, in the spaces between his heartbeats. The arena floor erupted. 10, 20, 30 hostiles, pouring from concealed hatches like ants from disturbed earth. Every morphology imaginable, flyers, crawlers, things that might have been both or neither. The distant observation platforms lit up. Kale caught glimpses of alien faces pressing against transparent barriers, watching. "Here we go," Sarah said. And there was something in her voice Kale had never heard before. Not fear, not excitement, relief. She opened fire. Humans had one advantage the consortium hadn't anticipated because they never needed to consider it. Humans came from a death world. Not officially. The consortium's classification system didn't have a category for planets that were actively trying to kill everything on their surface. But Earth qualified. 0.9 gravity. High enough to build muscle density and bone strength that most spacefaring species found wasteful. Oxygen-rich atmosphere. A highly reactive gas that most species considered mildly toxic. Weather patterns that could shift from calm to apocalyptic in minutes. Tectonics. Volcanism. Mass extinction events every few million years just to keep evolution on its toes. And humans had survived it. Thrived in it. Turned it into home. They'd also spent 10,000 years perfecting the art of killing each other with steadily increasing efficiency. Kale watched Sarah move, and it was like watching water flow uphill. She shouldn't have been that fast, that precise. She put 3 rounds through 3 different targets before Kale's brain finished processing she'd moved it all. Marcus was slower, more deliberate, but every shot landed. Every single one. Yuki fought like she was dancing, or like the fight was dancing around her, and she was just occupying the spaces where violence wasn't. Jimmy turned his corner into a no-go zone. Nothing with functional survival instincts went near Jimmy. Kale mostly tried not to die. He fired when targets presented themselves. Hit maybe 1 in 3. The weapon's recoil was wrong. Too much in weird directions, like the physics were arguing with each other. But it didn't matter. The others compensated. They moved like they'd trained together for years, not the 3 weeks they'd actually had. A flyer dove at Kale's head. He ducked, fired wildly, missed. The thing banked for another pass. Marcus shot it. Didn't even look. Just tracked it with whatever sense let him know where everything was calculated. The intercept pulled the trigger. The flyer dropped. "Pay attention," Marcus shouted. "Linguistics won't save you here." "I'm trying." Kale dropped behind cover as energy fire chewed chunks from his pillar. The wave kept coming, kept dying. Kale's weapon overheated. Warning lights he couldn't read flashed urgent colors. He slapped it, shook it, smacked it against the pillar. It cooled. Started working again. "Did you just percussive maintenance an alien plasma rifle?" Yuki sounded impressed. "Worked on my car." Kale fired 3 more shots. Hit once. The hostile stumbled, kept coming. He shot again. It dropped. His hands were shaking. His heart was trying to escape through his ribs. He'd never felt more alive. The flood of hostiles slowed. Thinned. Stopped. Sarah stood in the center of the arena, weapon lowered, breathing steady. Around her bodies. 40, maybe 50. Every conceivable morphology. All neutralized. The observation platforms had gone silent. "Combat trial complete," the amplified voice announced. Time elapsed. 7 minutes, 42 seconds. Hostile elimination rate, 97%. Ammunition efficiency, 0.83. Overall performance rating. The pause was long enough that Kale suspected something had broken. Exceeds parameters. Please proceed to medical evaluation. The medical bay was less a room and more a concept made physical. Kale lay on something that was part examination table, part sensory deprivation tank, while scanners he couldn't see did things he didn't understand. The Cyrix medical technician hovered nearby. Literally, they were a cloud of coordinated microorganisms that somehow functioned as a single consciousness. Kale found them unsettling in ways he couldn't articulate. "Your physiology is..." The technician paused, inefficient. "Redundant systems. Excessive muscle density. Bone structure designed for impacts that should never occur. You are built for catastrophe." "Thank you." Kale wasn't sure if that was a compliment. It was not praise. It is observation. Your species evolved in conditions the consortium would classify as pre-industrial military occupation. The Cyrix flowed closer. "Tell me, how many of your planet species are actively trying to kill you?" Kale thought about it. Most of them. Most. Okay, pretty much all of them. Except dogs. And we had to breed the danger out of dogs over 30,000 years. The Syrinx's colors shifted through frequencies Kale suspected were the equivalent of profound dismay. You domesticated predators. We domesticated everything. Predators, prey, plants that evolved to poison us. We looked at Earth's hostile biosphere and said this is fine. We'll just change everything until it isn't. Kale was warming to the subject. Do you know what wheat is? I do not. Grass. We turn grass into food through sheer stubbornness and 10,000 years of selective breeding. That's our species in a nutshell. If it tries to kill us, we either kill it back or we make it useful. The Syrinx was quiet for a long time. The council believes your species is dangerous. Yeah, they're not wrong. Also, yeah. But they misunderstand the nature of the danger. The Syrinx's scan completed with a harmonic chime. You're not dangerous because you are aggressive. Many species are aggressive. The Krell have destroyed 6 civilizations. The Volusians have absorbed 11 others. You are dangerous because you adapt. You take damage that should be fatal, and you learn from it. Evolve past it. We gave you weapons you had never seen before, and you mastered them in 7 minutes. Kale sat up. That's not impressive. That's just human. Precisely. The Syrinx drifted toward the exit. You are cleared. Physically, you are undamaged. Psychologically, I suspect you are all insane, but that appears to be your species' baseline. Kale found the others in what the ship designated a recuperation space, but which looked more like someone's idea of a hotel lobby filtered through a dream. Sarah was drinking something that steamed colors. Marcus was arguing with a holographic display. Jimmy and Yuki were comparing scores like they'd just finished a video game. Kale. Jimmy waved him over. Dude, you hit that flyer at 30 meters. I was aiming at something behind it. Doesn't matter. Still counts. Jimmy's grin was manic. We just did that. We just walked into an alien combat trial and destroyed it. The Krell delegation took 16 hours to complete the same trial. Marcus said, still not looking away from his display. The Syrinx took 9. Previous record was the Volusians at 4 hours, 20 minutes. He finally looked up. We finished in under 8 minutes. Sarah set down her color steam drink. That's not going to make us popular. Since when do we care about being popular? Yuki asked. Since we're trying to join an interstellar civilization that already thinks we're dangerous primitives, and we just prove them right in the most public way possible. Sarah stood. The consortium evaluates on 3 metrics: combat capability, diplomatic acumen, and technical innovation. We just aced the first one so hard, we probably broke their rating system. The next 2 are going to be harder. What? Jimmy asked. We're smart. We're adaptable. We can. Combat is universal, Sarah interrupted. Violence translates. But diplomacy? Technical cooperation? Those require trust. Shared values. Common ground. She looked at each of them. We need to prove we're not just good at killing things. We need to prove we're good at not killing things. Kale felt the weight of that settle over the room. Well, he said shit. Marcus laughed. It started small, then built until he was wheezing. We're so fucked. Completely, Yuki agreed. Utterly, Jimmy added. Sarah smiled. It was terrifying. Then, we'd better get creative. The diplomatic trial happened 3 days later. 3 days Kale spent reviewing alien psychology, cultural frameworks, communication matrices. 3 days of information that contradicted itself, tangled itself, refused to resolve into anything coherent. The consortium had 16 species. 16 completely different evolutionary paths, value systems, communication styles. The Krell thought in geological time, patient, unmovable, impossible to rush. The Syrinx were collectivists to a degree that made their concept of individual identity nearly theoretical. The Volusians communicated as much through chromatophore displays as through sound. And those were just the ones Kale could barely understand. This is impossible, he told Sarah the night before the trial. We can't possibly account for all their cultural variables in a single diplomatic scenario. Then don't. That's not helpful. It's not meant to be helpful. It's meant to be true. Sarah was reading something on her tablet, fingers swiping through pages of text Kale couldn't see. You're thinking like a linguist. All systems and rules and proper protocols. Think like a human. I don't know what that means. It means we improvise. We're spectacular at improvising. We spent our entire history making things up as we went along and pretending we meant to do that. She looked up, and there was something fierce in her expression. Every first contact scenario in human history started with mutual incomprehension and ended with either trade or war. Usually both. We're still here, which means we got good at figuring out what we had in common with beings we didn't understand. What if we have nothing in common with them? Everyone has something in common. Finding it is just pattern recognition. She went back to her reading. Get some sleep. Tomorrow's going to be weird. She wasn't wrong. The diplomatic arena was less an arena and more a space between spaces, a neutral zone where physical laws got negotiable and reality bent around the participants. Kale stepped through the transition field, and his sense of where he was stopped making sense. He could see the others, Sarah, Marcus, Yuki, Jimmy, but they were also somehow distant, like looking at them through the wrong end of a telescope. Delegation from Sol 3, the amplified voice announced. You will engage in standard diplomatic negotiation scenario. For parties, conflicting interests, limited resources. Achieve consensus or achieve acceptable compromise within 3 standard cycles. A holographic interface materialized in front of Kale. Text scrolled past in languages he was still learning, outlining a crisis, a resource dispute involving mining rights, territorial claims, religious significance, and what looked like 3 separate ecological concerns. Oh good, Marcus muttered. They gave us the impossible one. The other 3 delegations materialized on their respective platforms. The Krell, represented by a single massive individual whose shell bore the scarring of serious age. The Syrinx, a swarm that condensed into a vaguely humanoid shape for convenience. And the Veldar, not Vel, but others of their species, rippling with colors Kale was learning to read as diplomatic positions. This should be interesting, the Krell representative rumbled. Their translation matrix made them sound like continents having a conversation. The humans have no experience with multi-party negotiation. They have no experience with anything, one of the Veldar added. 3 weeks. They have existed in our context for 3 weeks. The Syrinx said nothing, which Kale had learned meant they were thinking. Sarah stepped forward. We acknowledge our inexperience. We request clarification on the scenario parameters. Kale felt something shift in the room's attention. She'd done something. Acknowledged weakness? Admitted ignorance? In human diplomacy, that was tactical suicide. Here, the Krell's posture changed. Softened. Marginally. An acceptable opening. Parameters are as follows. The scenario unfolded in complexity that made Kale's head hurt. The mining rights were on an asteroid that orbited through 3 different territorial claims, depending on which calendar system you used. The religious significance was to a species not present in the negotiation, but protected by consortium law. The ecological concerns involved a microorganism that might or might not be sentient and definitely was endangered. This is designed to have no solution, Yuki whispered through their comm link. It's a behavioral assessment. They want to see how we fail. Then we don't fail, Sarah said. The Krell proposed a time-sharing arrangement. Elegant, patient, completely unworkable given the religious restrictions. The Veldar countered with a cultural preservation approach. Beautiful, well-intentioned. Ignore the mining species' economic collapse if they couldn't access the resources. The Syrinx suggested collective ownership. Logically perfect, politically impossible. Each proposal crashed against the other's fundamental values, creating friction without progress. Kale watched Sarah watch them. She was doing something with her eyes, that thing where she seemed to be looking at everything and nothing simultaneously. We propose a hybrid approach, she said. The 3 delegations turned to her. The Krell's time-sharing framework is sound, but the intervals are wrong. Religious observance requires access during specific celestial alignments. We can schedule mining operations around those periods. The Veldar's cultural preservation is necessary, but it doesn't require preventing all extraction. We establish preservation zones and monitoring protocols. The Syrinx's collective ownership solves the political problem, but we implementation through a trust mechanism with representatives from each interested party. Silence. That could work, the Syrinx said slowly. It requires all parties to compromise, the Krell observed. Yes, Sarah agreed. That's what compromise means. But the microorganism, one of the Veldars said. Your proposal doesn't address. We hire the Syrinx to study it, Sarah interrupted. They're experts in collective consciousness. If it's sentient, they'll know. If it is, the whole thing stops, and we return to negotiation with a new participant. If it's not, we proceed with appropriate environmental safeguards. Marcus was staring at her. So is Kale. So is everyone. You just solved it, Marcus said. I listened to what everyone needed and found the overlap. Sarah looked genuinely confused. Isn't that what negotiation is? The Krell made a sound like tectonic plates approving. In theory. In practice, most species become attached to their initial positions and defend them regardless of merit. That's stupid, Yuki said. It is politics. The Veldar corrected. Same thing. The scenario dissolved. The amplified voice returned. Diplomatic trial complete. Time elapsed. 42 minutes. Consensus achieved. Observing delegations express surprise. Kale caught movement in the observation platforms. Hundreds of alien faces, watching. The consortium's council evaluating, judging. We are not accustomed to species who listen before speaking, one of the Veldar said quietly. Their colors were doing something complicated. It is refreshing. It's just efficient, Sarah said. We don't have time to waste on posturing. We're trying to survive, same as everyone else. The Krell's laughter was seismic. Survive. Yes, that is the human condition, is it not? Survival. Adaptation. The relentless forward motion of a species that refuses to accept extinction. We've had some close calls, Marcus admitted. And yet here you are, in our space, solving our theoretical scenarios, completing our trials in fractions of projected time. The Krell leaned forward, massive and ancient and suddenly very focused. Tell me, Commander Chun, what is it your species want from the consortium? Sarah met their gaze without hesitation. Partnership, not charity, not protection. We want to contribute, to learn, to be part of something larger than our single solar system. And if we refuse you, then we'll do it anyway, just slower. And we'll remember who helped and who didn't. The temperature in the neutral space dropped. Then, the Krell laughed again. I believe you. That is terrifying. We get that a lot, Jimmy said. The technical trial was scheduled for the following week. Kale spent the intervening days in a state of low-grade terror, watching their delegation's performance metrics climb on the public boards. They were ranking high, too high. The consortium didn't like it. Vel found him in the observation deck, staring at Earth's distant spark. You are troubled. We're making people nervous. You are making the council nervous. People is a broader category that includes species who find your performance encouraging. Vel's colors cycled through something that might have been amusement. The younger species especially, the ones who remember being dismissed. They are pleased to see the council's certainty challenged. We're not trying to challenge anyone. That is what makes it effective. Vel drifted closer. The consortium has existed for 17,000 years. We have integrated 63 species. We have protocols, expectations. We are very good at predicting how new species will perform, how they will integrate, what challenges they will present. You have violated every prediction. Is that bad? It is unprecedented, which the council finds unsettling. Vel's colors stilled into what Kale had learned to recognize as seriousness. There are factions who believe your species should be denied entry. Not because you are incapable, but because you are too capable. They fear what you might become with access to our technology, our resources, our knowledge. We just want, I know what you want. I have been observing you for 3 weeks. I have seen how your species operates. You do not conquer. You absorb. You take what is offered and what is not offered, and you make it yours through sheer insistence on survival. Vel post. It is remarkable. It is also exactly what the Council fears. So what do? You succeed. Completely. Undeniably. You make it impossible for the Council to refuse you without appearing arbitrary. And then, Vel's colors flickered through uncertainty. Then, we discover what happens when an unstoppable species meets an immovable institution. Kale thought about that for a long time after Vel left. The technical trial was different. No arena. No scenarios. Just a lab space that seemed to exist in multiple dimensions simultaneously, equipped with technology that made Kale's eyes hurt to look at directly. Their delegation stood around a fabrication platform, staring at the challenge projection. Design and construct a functional solution to the following problem. The instruction read, 17 colony ships are trapped in decaying orbits around a dying star. Standard rescue vessels cannot reach them before orbital collapse. Available resources are limited to materials present in this facility. Time limit, 12 standard cycles. Marcus whistled. That's cheerful. It's also impossible, Yuki said. We don't know these systems. We don't know this technology. They're asking us to engineer a solution using tools we've never seen to save ships we've never studied. So we learn fast, Sarah said. Jimmy, inventory the facility. Marcus, pull up everything we can access about consortium ship design. Yuki, you're on physics. I need to know what decaying orbit around a dying star actually means in practical terms. Kale, I speak 37 languages. I'm useless here. You think in systems. Help Marcus with the ship designs. Look for patterns. She was already moving toward the fabrication controls. We have 12 cycles. Let's not need them. They worked. Kale had never experienced time like this, fluid, elastic, simultaneously crawling and racing. He stared at holographic schematics until his eyes burned, finding the through lines in alien engineering. Hull design here, power systems there, life support, threading through it all in configurations that made sense once you stopped thinking in human terms. Marcus was muttering equations. Yuki was arguing with the physics simulation. Jimmy had disassembled half the facility and was organizing components in patterns only he understood. Sarah stood at the fabrication platform, hands moving through holographic controls, building something. What is that? Kale asked during what might have been hour 7 or 17. Time had stopped being linear. Drone. Autonomous. Heat shielded. Sarah didn't look up. If we can't send rescue ships, we send a swarm of smaller units. They attach to the colony ships, provide thrust, coordinate to push everything to safe orbit. Kale watched the design take shape. That's brilliant. That's human. We've been launching things into space with insufficient resources and inadequate technology since before we had computers. This is just scaling up. She paused. Marcus, I need those ship attachment protocols. Working on it. These things are held together with what I can only describe as structural optimism and math I don't understand. Describe the optimism. I can work with optimism. They built, adjusted, rebuilt. The first drone prototype exploded during testing. The second one melted. The third one achieved stable orbit in the simulation, approached a colony ship, and attached itself with mechanical precision. We need 200 of these, Sarah said. We have enough materials for 60, Jimmy reported. Then, we make them reusable. They push one ship, detach, move to the next. Yuki was already adjusting the programming. Increases complexity, but reduces resource requirement by 70%. The observation platforms were filling. Kale caught glimpses of alien faces, watching. The council, other delegations. Hundreds of beings witnessing the human delegation attempt something that should have been beyond them. Cycle 9. The drones were printing. 60 autonomous units. Each one cobbled together from materials they'd learned to use 3 hours ago, guided by programming written in languages they'd barely learned to read. Cycle 10. Testing. 37 drones passed. 23 failed in various entertaining ways. We need 60 working units, Sarah said. We have 37. Then, we repair the failures, Marcus said. We have 2 cycles. Cycle 11. Repairs. Adjustments. Rebuilding. Cale's hands were steady despite the exhaustion, making his vision swim. He was soldering components using techniques he'd learned from a holographic tutorial 10 minutes ago. It was working. Mostly. Cycle 12, final hour. 58 working drones. Close enough, Sarah decided. Run the simulation. The holographic representation showed 17 colony ships spiraling toward a star that was eating itself from the inside out. The drones launched a swarm of human-built hope, racing against orbital decay and stellar collapse. They watched the simulation run, watched their drones attach, thrust, coordinate. The colony ships' orbits began to stabilize. Slowly, so slowly. 3 ships weren't going to make it. No, Yuki said. No, come on. The drones were adapting, redistributing thrust, prioritizing the most critical ships. It wasn't elegant. It wasn't optimal. It was human engineering at its finest. Good enough, fast enough, and willing to sacrifice perfection for survival. All 17 ships reached stable orbit with 47 seconds to spare. The observation platforms erupted. Technical trial complete, the amplified voice said. Time elapsed, 11.97 cycles. Success rate, 100%. Method, unconventional. Efficiency, questionable. Results, acceptable. Kel sat down. Just sat down right there on the lab floor, legs giving out, exhaustion crashing over him like a physical force. We did it, Jimmy said. Holy shit, we actually did it. Unconventional, Marcus laughed. They called our engineering unconventional. Our engineering is duct tape and prayer, Yuki said. It's all unconventional. Sarah was still standing, watching the simulation results scroll past. Her expression was unreadable. Commander, Cale managed. We passed, she said. All 3 trials. Combat, diplomacy, technical. We passed. That's good, right? That's unprecedented. She finally looked at him. No species has ever completed integration trials in under a month. We did it in 3 weeks. We didn't just pass. We exceeded parameters in every category. So the council has to accept us. The council has to make a decision, Sarah corrected. Whether they accept us or not. That's about to get political. Cale groaned. I hate politics. Everyone hates politics. That's what makes it politics. The amplified voice returned. Human delegation, you are summoned to council chambers for final evaluation. Please proceed to designated coordinates. Sarah helped Cale to his feet. Everyone looked presentable. We're about to find out if we just earned humanity a place in the stars, or if we just made the galaxy's most powerful enemies. Your pep talks need work, Jimmy said. Shut up and walk. They walked. The council chambers existed somewhere between physics and philosophy. Cale stepped through the threshold, and his brain tried to catalog what he was seeing. A space that was simultaneously vast and intimate, filled with beings that represented 16 different evolutionary paths, all of them older than human civilization, all of them watching. The human delegation stood in what might have been the center of the room, or might have been everywhere at once. Geometry here was flexible. Cale's inner ear filed another complaint. He ignored it. This is deeply weird, Jimmy whispered. Deeply, Yuki agreed. The council members arranged themselves in configurations that probably meant something profound. The Krell delegation occupied a platform that suggested permanence. The Syrinx swirled in mathematical formations. The Volusians rippled colors that Cale was learning to read as formal protocol. And others, species he'd barely encountered, whose names he couldn't pronounce, whose evolutionary history made his head spin. A voice emerged from everywhere and nowhere, translated into every language simultaneously. The Council of the Galactic Consortium acknowledges the delegation from Sol 3, designation human. You have completed the integration trials in unprecedented time. We have evaluated your performance. We have observed your methods. We have concerns. Sarah stood perfectly still. That military thing again, where she became denser somehow. More present. "We're listening," she said. "Your combat capability exceeds all projections. You mastered alien weapons systems in minutes. You eliminated opposition with efficiency that borders on concerning. You operate with violence as a primary tool, not a final resort." "We operate with violence as an available tool," Sarah corrected. "There's a difference." Murmurs rippled through the assembly. Kale suspected most species didn't interrupt the council. "Your diplomatic approach is unconventional. You solve a scenario designed to be unsolvable by ignoring proper negotiation hierarchy and proceeding directly to practical solutions. This suggests a fundamental disregard for established protocol." "We respect protocol when protocol serves a purpose," Sarah said. "When it's just ceremony obscuring problems, we tend to cut through it. It's faster." More murmurs. Kale was starting to sweat. This was going badly. "Your technical solutions are..." The council voice paused, crude. "Effective but crude. You prioritize function over elegance. You accept marginal success over optimal failure. Your engineering philosophy appears to be sufficient is acceptable. Sufficient keeps people alive," Marcus said. "Optimal gets people killed while you're still optimizing." The council was silent for a long time. Then a new voice spoke, deeper, resonant with age that made Kale's bones ache. The Krell council representative, rising from their platform with a weight of continental drift. "The human delegation displays characteristics we find troubling. They're violent. They are impatient. They are willing to sacrifice elegance for mere adequacy. They have existed in our context for 3 weeks, and already they challenge our protocols, our methods, our fundamental assumptions about integration." The Krell leaned forward, massive and ancient and absolutely focused. "I propose we grant them provisional membership immediately." The chamber erupted. Kale's brain stuttered. He looked at Sarah, who looked equally confused. That was the opposite of what he'd expected. "Council member Thelvar," another voice cut through the chaos. One of the Veldar, colors flashing alarm. "You cannot be serious. The humans have demonstrated every quality we have spent millennia trying to discourage among member species. They are dangerous. They are survivors." The Krell interrupted. "They're adaptable. They're exactly what the consortium needs." "Needs?" The Veldar's colors went sharp. "We need stability. Order. The gradual integration of species who can be trusted to follow established patterns. The humans have no patterns. They are chaos pretending to be a civilization. We are a civilization that learned to harness chaos," Sarah said. Her voice cut through the argument like a blade through smoke. "Because our planet gave us no choice. Earth doesn't offer stability. Earth offers catastrophe on a regular schedule and random disasters between scheduled catastrophes. We evolved to handle that, to expect it, to build systems that survive it." She stepped forward. Kale wanted to tell her to stop, that you didn't just move during a council session, but she was already moving and there was nothing he could do but watch. "You're right to be concerned about us. We're violent. We spent 10,000 years killing each other over resources, territory, ideology, and sometimes just because we were bored. We're impatient. Our average lifespan is barely a century, and we cram everything we can into those years because we know they're running out. We're crude. Our technology is built on principles of does it work and can we fix it with spare parts, not elegant mathematical perfection." The council was listening. All of them. Kale had never seen an entire room of alien dignitaries completely silent. But we're also what happens when a species refuses to go extinct. We've survived ice ages, plagues, meteor impacts, nuclear war, climate collapse, and our own stupid decisions more times than we can count. We're still here. We're still adapting. We're still building things that work just well enough to get us to tomorrow. And then we wake up tomorrow and build better things. She paused. "You want to know if you could trust us?" "No, you can't. Not completely. We'll break your rules when your rules get in the way of survival. We'll find shortcuts you didn't know existed. We'll solve problems in ways that offend your sensibilities. Kale thought she was done. She wasn't done. But you can trust us to survive, to adapt, to look at impossible problems and find the messy, inelegant, barely adequate solutions that keep people alive. You can trust us to listen to your concerns and then make our own decisions anyway. You can trust us to be exactly what we've always been, humans. Stubborn, creative, occasionally brilliant, frequently foolish, and absolutely unwilling to give up. She stopped. The silence that followed was archaeological. Then, the Krell started laughing. That seismic sound that made the floor vibrate. This is why I propose immediate membership. Because they are honest about their flaws. Because they understand their limitations and proceed anyway. Because they are the first species in 4,000 years to stand before this council and say we will break your rules without apology. That is not reassuring, a Veldar said. It is not meant to be reassuring. It is meant to be true. The Krell's amusement faded into something more serious. The consortium faces challenges. The dark matter incursion in the Outer Rim. The collapsed fold-space routes through the Kepler sectors. The increasing difficulty of maintaining our territory as it expands. We need species who can adapt to chaos, who can find solutions in crisis, who can survive conditions we have spent millennia trying to eliminate. You want to weaponize them, another council member said. One of the insectoid Vrakash, their translation matrix making them sound crystalline and cold. I want a partnership with them, the Krell corrected. There is a difference. Is there? You just described them as crisis specialists, as beings who thrive in catastrophe. You want to point them at our problems and see what happens. Yes, the Krell said simply. That is exactly what I want. The debate continued. Kale lost track of the arguments, the counter-arguments, the procedural objections, and parliamentary maneuvers. Species he'd never heard of weighed in. Factions he didn't know existed revealed themselves. The consortium was fracturing along fault lines he couldn't see, with humanity as the catalyst. This is bad, he whispered to Yuki. This is interesting, she corrected. They're arguing about us. Not to us. We're not even participants anymore. We're the subject. She was right. The human delegation stood in the center of the chamber while the council tore itself apart debating humanity's merits. Sarah had stopped talking. She just stood there, watching, that expression on her face that meant she was calculating something Kale couldn't see. Finally, after what might have been hours or days, time was negotiable here. The council voice returned, "We will vote." The question before the council: shall the species-designated human be granted provisional membership in the Galactic Consortium subject to standard observation and evaluation protocols? Members may now register their position. Holographic displays materialized throughout the chamber. Votes appeared as cascading light. Colors Kale was learning to read as affirmative, negative, abstention. The tally built in real time. 7 affirmative. The Krell. 3 smaller species Kale didn't recognize. And the Syrinx, their vote appearing as a complex mathematical proof that resolved to yes. 6 negative. The Veldar faction. 2 others. The Vrakash. 3 abstentions. The chamber was holding its breath. Then, one by one, the abstentions resolved. 1 to affirmative. 2 to negative. 8 to 8. Perfect, Marcus muttered. We deadlocked the galactic government. The council voice returned. The vote is tied. In the event of council deadlock, protocol requires. Another pause, longer this time. The challenged species may present a final statement before the deciding vote is cast by the council chair. Kale looked at Sarah. Everyone looked at Sarah. She looked terrified. Just for a moment. Just long enough for Kale to see the human under the commander. The woman who'd been carrying the weight of humanity's future for 3 weeks without breaking. Who was about to make or destroy everything with whatever she said next. Then, she breathed, centered, became that denser version of herself. I'm not good at speeches, she said. I'm a soldier. I'm trained to follow orders, complete missions, protect people. I wasn't trained for this. None of us were. We came here knowing we were outmatched, outclassed, and out of our depth. We came anyway. She walked, not toward anything specific, just walked through the chamber like she was thinking out loud. You want to know what humans are? We're the species that looked at fire and said, I wonder if I can control that. We're the species that saw birds flying and decided we should do that too, despite not having wings or any reasonable expectation of success. We're the species that built machines to help us think, then worried those machines might replace us, then built them anyway because we couldn't stop ourselves. We're curiosity weaponized by evolution into a survival strategy. Kale had never heard her talk like this. Personal. Vulnerable. You're debating whether to let us into your consortium. Whether we're safe. Whether we'll follow your rules. Whether we can be trusted. And I want to tell you, yes, we're safe. We'll follow your rules. You can trust us. But that's not true. We're not safe. We're catastrophically dangerous. To ourselves most of all. We've come close to extinction more times than you probably believe is possible. We're still here because every time we face catastrophe, a few of us survive, and those few rebuild everything from scratch, and we try again. She stopped walking. Face the council directly. You don't have to trust us. You don't even have to like us. But we're asking for a chance. A chance to be part of something larger than our single solar system. A chance to learn from species who've been navigating the stars for millennia. A chance to contribute what we're good at, which is surviving impossible situations and finding solutions nobody else would consider because they're too crude, too inelegant, too human. Her voice dropped, got quiet, made everyone lean in here. We know we're different. We know we're difficult. We know we're probably going to break things you consider important and apologize later and break them again. That's who we are. But we're also the species that sent out a golden record on a tiny spacecraft hoping someone would find it and understand that we existed, that we wanted to be known, that we were reaching out across the void saying we're here, we're alive, please don't let us be alone. Silence. So that's what I'm asking. Don't leave us alone. Give us a chance to prove we can be part of this. Give us a chance to surprise you. Give us a chance to fail and learn and try again because that's what we do best. We fail. We learn. We survive. She sat down. Right there. Just sat down in the middle of the council chambers and looked exhausted. That's all I've got, she said. Vote however. You need to vote. The council chair rose. Kale hadn't even noticed them. A species he didn't recognize, vaguely reptilian, covered in what might have been scales or might have been computational arrays, ancient beyond calculation. The chair has heard the final statement. The chair will now cast the deciding vote. The chamber held its breath. The chair votes affirmative. Provisional membership granted. Evaluation period, 10 standard years. Welcome to the consortium, humans. Try not to break everything. The chamber erupted. Again, Kale's brain was stuttering. They'd done it. Somehow impossibly, they'd done it. Jimmy was shouting. Yuki was laughing. Marcus had sat down next to Sarah, and they were both just sitting there looking shell-shocked. Kale felt his legs give out for the second time in a week. He didn't fight it. Just sat down. Let the exhaustion and relief and terror crash over him. They'd passed. Humanity was in. What the hell happened now? The celebration was muted. Humans didn't really know how to celebrate galactic acceptance because it had never happened before. They'd gotten moderately drunk on substances the ship's fabricators produced after extensive negotiation, but mostly they just sat around looking stunned. 10 years, Marcus said, staring at his drink. They're giving us 10 years to prove we can handle membership. That's generous, Sarah said. We've collapsed 3 governments in the last century. For if you count the EU thing. I try not to think about the EU thing. Kale was too tired to contribute. He'd spent the last 3 weeks learning more about alien civilizations than any human in history, completing trials that should have taken years, and apparently helping break a council deadlock. His brain had filed for early retirement. So what happens now? Yuki asked. We go home, Sarah said. We report to the UN. We explain that humanity is now on probation with the galaxy. We prepare for actual integration, trade agreements, cultural exchanges, technology transfers. The boring parts. The boring parts sound terrifying, Jimmy said. They are. But at least we're past the exciting parts. Sarah stood, stretched, looked at her small team of exhausted humans who'd somehow changed everything. You all did good work. Better than good. You represented humanity in front of the oldest civilization in the galaxy, and you didn't embarrass us. That's more than I had any right to expect. You gave a hell of a speech, Marcus said. I panicked and said things. It worked. Panic usually does for humans. Kale laughed. Couldn't help it. The absurdity of everything caught up to him all at once, and he was laughing too hard to breathe, and then the others were laughing, and they were all just sitting there in an alien spacecraft, giggling like idiots about the fact that they talked their way into the galaxy. Vel found them an hour later, still laughing intermittently. You were celebrating? Vel's colors were curious. We're processing, Sarah corrected. Celebration requires more energy than we currently have. I see. Vel drifted closer. I wanted to inform you. Your performance has created ripples. Other species are watching. Some with approval, some with concern, all with interest. You have made yourselves significant. We were trying to make ourselves acceptable, Kale said. You succeeded at both. Unfortunately, Vel's colors flickered through something complicated. The consortium has existed in relative stability for millennia. You have introduced instability. Some species see this as opportunity. Others see it as threat. The next 10 years will be interesting. Your people have a curse, don't they? Sarah asked. May you live in interesting times. That's Chinese, Kale corrected. And it's probably apocryphal. Close enough. Sarah looked at Vel. Is this a warning? This is observation. And perhaps advice. You have proven you can survive trials designed to evaluate capability. The real challenge is surviving politics designed to manage it. The consortium will test you in ways that have nothing to do with combat or engineering. Ways that are slower, more subtle, more difficult to see. Bureaucracy, Marcus said. Precisely. We're so fucked, Yuki said cheerfully. Vel's colors rippled through what might have been amusement. Perhaps. Or perhaps you will adapt to politics the way you adapted to everything else. By breaking all expectations and surviving anyway. That's our specialty, Jimmy agreed. The journey home took 3 days. 3 days of decompression, of writing reports nobody would really believe, of trying to process what they'd accomplished. Kale spent most of it staring out the observation port at the stars, thinking about how they weren't just stars anymore. They were neighborhoods, territories, home to species he'd met, species he'd learned from, species who'd voted on whether humanity deserved a place among them. They'd said yes, barely, by the smallest possible margin. But yes, Earth grew in the viewport, blue and green and brown and beautiful. Kale had left it 3 weeks ago, thinking it was all humanity had. Now was their starting point, their origin, the place they'd return to and leave from over and over as they spread into a galaxy that had finally agreed to make room for them. Nervous? Sarah asked, appearing beside him. Terrified. You, same. She was quiet for a moment. We're going to have to explain all this to people who weren't there, who didn't see what we saw, who don't understand what we've signed up for. Think they'll believe us. Some will. Some won't. Most will argue about it for years while we're already doing the work. She smiled. It's very human. The Valdris began its orbital approach. Kale could see the ISS, tiny, antiquated, held together with hope and duct tape. But there were other things too. New construction. Orbital platforms he didn't recognize. Humanity was already building. We're not going to waste this, he said. Are we? We're human. We waste everything. Then we learn from wasting it and try again. Sarah's reflection in the viewport looked calm. At peace. But we'll get better. We always do. That's the thing the council doesn't quite understand yet. We're not asking permission to be perfect. We're asking permission to fail and improve. That's all we've ever done. The ship docked with the receiving station. Alert chimed. The delegation gathered their things, prepared to disembark, to return to a planet that was about to learn it wasn't alone anymore. Ready? Sarah asked them. No. Marcus said. Absolutely not. Yuki agreed. Never been readier to be unprepared, Jimmy added. Kale took a breath. Thought about everything they'd done, everything they'd learned, everything that came next. Let's go tell Earth we joined the galaxy, he said. They walked through the airlock into history. The debriefing took 6 hours. Then another 6. Then they gave up pretending it would only take 6 hours and just kept going. Kale sat in a room in Geneva, surrounded by representatives from every nation, every space agency, every organization that had a stake in humanity's future, and tried to explain what had happened. You completed integration trials that normally take years in 3 weeks, someone said. Not accusatory, just confused. Yes, Sarah confirmed. You were granted provisional membership, despite the council being deadlocked on your acceptance. Yes, and now we have 10 years to prove we can handle being part of an interstellar civilization. That's the core of it, yes. The room dissolved into argument. Expected. Kale had stopped paying attention to the specific words and was just monitoring the emotional temperature. Concern, excitement, fear, ambition. The full range of human response to discovering they weren't alone and had been accepted by beings who were demonstrably better at almost everything. Dr. Elena Rodriguez from the UN Committee for Extraterrestrial Affairs finally called for order. Let's focus on practical next steps. What does provisional membership actually mean? Sarah pulled up a holographic display. Technology they'd been given, consortium standard, already more advanced than anything Earth had produced. We get access to consortium trade networks, cultural exchanges, and basic technology transfers. We don't get voting rights on the council until we complete the evaluation period. We're expected to open Earth to consortium visitors and establish embassies on at least 3 member worlds within 2 years. Embassies. Elena's expression suggested she was already imagining the diplomatic nightmare. We'll need ambassadors. People trained in alien protocol, cultural sensitivity, interspecies communication. We'll need linguists, Kale interrupted. Cultural anthropologists. Psychologists who can help humans adapt to alien contact. Scientists who can learn consortium technology and translate it for Earth use. Engineers who can work with alien systems. Teachers who can prepare the next generation for a galaxy where we're the new kids. The room went quiet. That's a lot of people, someone said. That's civilization-level effort, Kale corrected. We're not just adding some aliens to our existing systems. We're rebuilding those systems to function in a galactic context. Education, economy, culture, law. Everything changes. How fast? Elena asked. We have 10 years to prove we can handle it, Sarah said. So realistically? 5, maybe 3. The consortium will be watching. Other species will be testing us. We need to demonstrate competence, stability, and integration capability before the evaluation period ends. And if we fail? Sarah's expression was unreadable. Then, we're back where we started. Alone in our solar system. Except now we know what we're missing. The room absorbed that. Right, Elena said. Then we'd better not fail. The news broke 2 days later. Controlled release. Coordinated announcements across every major network, every government, every communication platform humanity had. The response was predictably chaotic. Kale watched the reaction scroll past on his tablet. Celebration in some places. Panic in others. Conspiracy theories forming in real time. Religious groups scrambling to update their theology. Scientists losing their minds with excitement. Politicians arguing about jurisdiction, authority, who got to represent humanity to the stars. The usual human response to anything significant. Everybody screaming in different directions. We're handling this well, Marcus said, deadpan, watching the same feed. We're handling this exactly as expected, Kale corrected. Give a week. We'll adapt. He was right. A week later, the initial chaos had resolved into something approaching organized confusion. Universities were launching xenobiology programs. Governments were forming contact committees. Private companies were filing for consortium trade licenses. Earth was pivoting toward the galaxy with all the grace of a freight train changing tracks. But it was pivoting. Sarah called a meeting of the delegation. They gathered in a conference room that felt absurdly normal after 3 weeks in alien spacecraft and impossible spaces. "We've been offered positions," she said without preamble. "The UN wants to establish a Department of Galactic Affairs. They want us to run it." Silence. "That's insane," Marcus said. "We're not qualified to run a department. We're the only humans who've passed consortium integration trials," Sarah said. "That makes us the most qualified by default." "What about Vel?" Yuki asked. "The consortium is assigning us liaisons, right? Shouldn't the liaisons advise? They don't command. The consortium is very clear about that. Integration is the responsibility of the integrating species. They'll help, but they won't do it for us." Sarah pulled up organizational charts. "We need to build a framework for everything. Alien languages and translation protocols, cultural exchange programs, technology assessment and integration, trade negotiations, legal frameworks for interspecies contracts, military coordination for mutual defense. And we need to do it fast enough to prove competence, but slow enough not to collapse our existing systems." "So impossible," Jimmy said. "Difficult," Sarah corrected. "Impossible was getting into the consortium in the first place. We already did that part." Kale stared at the organizational charts. Hundreds of positions, thousands of tasks, a complete rebuild of humanity's relationship with existence itself. "I'll do it," he said. "I mean, I'm terrified and completely unqualified, but I'll do it." "Same," Yuki said. "Obviously," Marcus added. Jimmy shrugged. "We've come this far being terrified and unqualified. Why stop now?" Sarah's smile was small, but genuine. "Then, let's build a department. And let's try not to embarrass ourselves more than absolutely necessary." 6 months later, Kale stood in what was technically called the Diplomatic Orientation Center, but what everyone actually called Alien School. 300 humans, selected from 40 countries, learning languages that didn't have sounds human throats could make, studying cultures that had evolved on worlds nothing like Earth, preparing to represent humanity to species who'd been navigating the galaxy for millennia. He was teaching a class on Volusian chromatic communication. It wasn't going well. "So do the colors mean different things depending on speed of transition and spatial distribution?" one student asked. "Yes. And some colors are considered rude?" "Depending on context, yes." "What context?" "That's complicated." The student looked defeated. Kale sympathized. He was teaching material he'd learned 6 months ago to people who'd learned humans weren't alone 3 months ago. Everyone was drowning. Everyone was adapting. It was very human. His tablet chimed. Priority message from Sarah. First consortium delegation arriving in 3 days. Reception at the new embassies. Attendance mandatory. Bring anti-anxiety meds. Kale laughed. Shared it with the class. They laughed too. That slightly hysterical edge that came from stress and exhaustion and the surreal reality of preparing to host aliens on Earth. "Right," he said. "Let's talk about Volusian humor." "Yes, they have humor." "No, you won't understand it." "Let's try anyway." The class continued. Later, Kale met with the other department heads. Trade negotiations were progressing. Technology transfers were being carefully managed. Cultural exchange programs were experiencing challenges. "The Syrics want to send 100,000 individuals," the cultural liaison reported. "Collectively, they form about 70 distinct consciousnesses. I have no idea how to process that bureaucratically." "Do they need individual visas or collective ones?" someone asked. "I don't know. Nobody knows. We're inventing the rules as we go." "So, normal operations," Marcus said. The meeting continued. Problems were identified. Solutions were attempted. Some worked. Most didn't. Everyone adapted. 3 days later, the first consortium delegation arrived. Not the Valdris, that had been a private vessel. This was official. A consortium diplomatic ship that materialized in Earth orbit with technology that made every physicist on the planet need to sit down and breathe into a paper bag. Kale watched it descend from the new receiving station. Graceful. Impossible. Real. The delegation emerged. Vel, who they knew. 3 Krell, who were even more impressive in Earth's gravity. A Syrinx collective that had compressed itself into something vaguely humanoid for convenience. And others. Species Kale had only seen in briefings, now here, on Earth, about to meet humans on human ground. Sarah met them at the airlock. Professional, polished, absolutely terrified, and completely hiding it. "Welcome to Earth," she said. "We're honored to host you." Vel's colors rippled through formal greeting patterns. "We are honored to be received. Your planet is vibrant." "That's a polite word for it." One of the Krell rumbled. "I can feel the tectonics from here. This world is actively trying to reshape itself." "Welcome to the Death World," Marcus muttered. "Indeed." The Krell sounded amused. "Let us see what you have built." The tour took hours. The new embassy complex, constructed in record time through international cooperation and control panic. Meeting rooms designed to accommodate every known species morphology. Translation systems that were mostly working. Cultural centers displaying human art, music, literature, history. Kale watched the consortium delegation experience Earth for the first time. They were cautious, curious, occasionally alarmed by things humans considered normal. The weather changed 3 times during the tour, gravitational variations from altitude, the sheer biological diversity. "How many distinct species share this planet?" the Syrinx asked. "Depends on your classification system. Millions, probably. And you are dominant despite being..." The Syrinx paused, soft, slow, vulnerable to most environmental hazards. "We're clever," Kale said. "And stubborn. That is becoming apparent." The first official diplomatic session happened that evening. Representatives from the consortium, the UN, major Earth governments, all gathered in the main assembly hall. Kale attended as part of the human delegation, watching history happen in real time. Trade agreements were outlined. Technology transfer protocols established. Cultural exchange programs formalized. It was bureaucratic, tedious, world-changing. Kale found himself sitting next to one of the Krell during a break. The massive being was carefully manipulating a human-sized cup of something the fabricators had produced. "Your species is very young," the Krell observed. "You understand this?" "We're aware," Kale said. "And yet you do not act young. You act desperate, rushed, as if you were running out of time. We are. Our average lifespan is maybe 80 years. The consortium operates on timescales we can barely comprehend. If we want to participate, we have to move fast." The Krell was quiet for a long time. "That is tragic. That's human. Perhaps both." The session resumed. Agreements were finalized. The first formal trade contract between Earth and the consortium was ratified. Humans could now legally purchase consortium technology, sell Earth goods to alien markets, participate in the galactic economy. Small steps. Historic steps. That night, Kale stood on the embassy balcony, watching Geneva's lights spread below. Somewhere up there, the consortium ship waited in orbit. Beyond that, the galaxy. 16 species who'd agreed to give humanity a chance. Sarah joined him. They stood in comfortable silence. "We're doing it," she finally said. "We're actually integrating. We're trying to integrate. There's a difference. Trying is all we've ever done." She was quiet for a moment. "I got a report from the council. Our evaluation metrics. We're exceeding expectations in technical adaptation and trade engagement. We're struggling with cultural sensitivity and diplomatic protocol. About what you'd expect. They think we'll make it. They think we're unpredictable. Some of them find that encouraging. Others find it terrifying. All of them are watching to see what happens." Kale thought about that. About Earth, vibrant and chaotic and beautiful. About humans, stubborn and creative and desperately trying to prove they belonged among the stars. "We're going to make mistakes," he said. "So many mistakes. But we'll learn from them. Eventually. And we'll keep trying. That's all we can do." They stood there a while longer, watching the lights, thinking about the future, carrying the weight of humanity's cosmic coming of age. Tomorrow there would be more meetings, more negotiations, more desperate attempts to build systems that could handle the reality of being part of something larger than themselves. Tonight, they were just 2 humans who'd helped change everything, standing in the dark, hoping they hadn't broken anything too badly. It felt appropriate. Year 3 of the evaluation period started with an incident. Not a diplomatic incident. Those happen weekly, and everyone had stopped being surprised by them. This was different. The kind of different that made Sarah call an emergency meeting at 0300 Geneva time, which meant something had gone catastrophically right or catastrophically wrong. Cale stumbled into the conference room, still half asleep. The others looked similarly disheveled except for Sarah, who apparently didn't require sleep anymore, just periodic caffeine infusions and the occasional existential crisis. There's been a situation in the Kepler sectors, she said, pulling up a holographic display. Fold space route collapsed. 3 consortium vessels stranded. Rescue operation is complicated because the collapse created space-time instabilities that standard consortium ships can't navigate. Okay, Marcus said. That's awful. Why are we involved? Because we volunteered. The room woke up fast. We what? Yuki's voice went up an octave. The consortium put out a call for assistance. Standard protocol when dealing with unprecedented situations. They were expecting engineering consultations, maybe some creative problem solving from species who think differently. Sarah's expression was complicated. We offered to send a ship. We don't have ships that can navigate space-time instabilities, Cale said. We barely have ships that can navigate normal space. We have the resilience. Everyone groaned. The resilience was humanity's embarrassing answer to consortium shipbuilding. A retrofit cargo hauler held together with innovations the engineers called adaptive engineering and everyone else called duct tape and prayer. It had been designed by a joint team of human engineers and frustrated consortium advisors who'd eventually given up trying to make humans do things the right way and just help them do things the human way more safely. It was ugly, inefficient, built on principles that violated several laws of elegant design. It was also the only human ship rated for deep space operations. The Resilience can't handle space-time instabilities, Marcus said. It's rated for standard fold space transit. Maybe some light gravitational anomalies. Not whatever fresh hell a collapsed fold space route creates. That's what the consortium said. Then, I sent them the technical specifications. Sarah pulled up another display. The Resilience is built redundant. Every system has backups. Every backup has workarounds. It's over-engineered for survivability, not efficiency. It can take damage that would cripple a consortium vessel and keep functioning. That's not the same as navigating space-time instabilities, Yuki said. No, but it means if things go wrong, our ship might survive where theirs won't. Sarah looked at each of them. The consortium is skeptical. Some council members think this is hubris. Others think it's an opportunity to see what humans do under pressure. All of them are watching. Why are we doing this? Cale asked. We could just not volunteer for impossible rescue missions. Because 3 ships full of people are dying. Because the consortium needs to know they can rely on humans in a crisis. Because this is exactly the kind of situation where being crude and redundant and built for catastrophe actually matters. Sarah paused. And because if we pull this off, we've proven something the council can't ignore. The room was quiet. I'm going, Jimmy said. Obviously, me too, Yuki added. Marcus sighed. This is stupid and reckless, and I'm absolutely in. They all looked at Cale. I'm a linguist, he said. What am I supposed to do on a rescue mission? Talk to the people we're rescuing. Help coordinate with consortium command. Make sure nothing gets lost in translation when we're improvising solutions to impossible problems. Sarah's smile was tired. We need you. Cale thought about the last 3 years. About humans stumbling through integration, making mistakes, learning, adapting. About standing before the council and asking for a chance to prove they belonged. When do we leave? 6 hours. Fantastic. That gives me time to panic properly. The Resilience was exactly as beautiful as its name suggested. Not at all. Cale stood in the docking bay staring at humanity's deep space rescue vessel and trying not to laugh hysterically. It looks like someone welded a freight container to an engine and hope for the best, Yuki observed. That's exactly what we did. The chief engineer said cheerfully. Commander Maria Santos, 30 years NASA experience, 2 years trying to make human engineering work with consortium technology. She'd age a decade in those 2 years. She's not pretty, but she's functional. Redundant power systems, modular hull design, life support that can run on backup protocols for 3 weeks if necessary. Does it fly? Marcus asked. Flew her to Mars and back last month. Worked fine. Mars is not a collapsed fold space route. No, but the principle's the same. Get there, do the job, come home. Maria patted the ship's hull with genuine affection. Trust me, the resilience will get you there. Will it get us back? Kale asked. Let's focus on one impossible thing at a time. The crew assembled. Fifta nomans tutal. Maria and her engineering team. A medical unit led by Dr. Kwame Osei, who'd spent the last 2 years learning to treat alien physiology. Navigation Spezialists. And the core delegation. Sarah, Marcus, Yuki, Jimmy, Kale. Vel had come to see them off. Their colors were doing complicated things Kale had learned to read as concern. This is dangerous, Vel said, even by human standards. That's what makes it worthwhile, Sarah replied. If it was safe, someone else would already be doing it. The council is divided on this. Some admire your courage. Others question your judgment. Many are preparing for you to fail. What do you think? Vel's color stilled. I think you're either the bravest species I have encountered or the most foolish. Possibly both. Definitely both. A pause. I also think you might succeed. Humans have a peculiar talent for surviving situations they should not. We'll take that as encouragement. It was meant as observation. But yes. Good luck, Commander Chun. Try to bring everyone home. They boarded. The airlock sealed with a sound like finality. Kale found his station, communications, and translation tucked between navigation and engineering where he could coordinate with consortium command and the rescue targets. The resilience shuddered to life. Not the smooth hum of consortium vessels. More like a controlled explosion barely contained by engineering and willpower. All systems nominal, Maria reported. Which by our standards means everything's working well enough to not kill us immediately. That's the spirit, Sarah said. Take us out. The ship lurched into motion. Geneva's orbital platform fell away. Earth shrank to a blue marble, then a point of light, then memory. The fold space generator spun up with sounds that suggested it was filing complaints with the laws of physics. Initiating fold space transit, navigation announced. Destination, Kepler Sector 7. Transit time, 40 hours. Reality folded. Kale's stomach filed a formal protest with his brain. His brain sympathized, but couldn't do anything about it. Fold space transit wasn't meant to be comfortable. It was meant to move ships faster than light through shortcuts in space-time that shouldn't exist. The resilience handled it the way it handled everything, by being too stubborn to care about elegance. 40 hours. Kale spent them reviewing every communication protocol, every xenological briefing, every scenario where his linguistics expertise might matter. The stranded ships were consortium mixed crews, Krell, Volusian, Syrinx, others. All of them had been waiting 6 days for rescue. Life support was critical. Time was running out. We've got communication, Kale announced as they approached the collapse zone. Stranded vessels responding. There. He paused, checking the translation matrix. Surprised we're here. Tell them we're the rescue team, Sarah said. They know. They're surprised because we're human. Kale listened to the cascade of translated responses. They're questioning whether we can navigate the instabilities. Can we? Sarah asked Maria. Define can. Maria was studying the navigational data, frowning. The collapse created pockets of unstable spacetime, like rapids in a river, but the river is reality and the rapids can unmake you if you hit them wrong. Consortium ships are built precise, elegant engines, optimized hulls, designed to work perfectly in stable conditions. Hit an instability, those elegant systems catastrophically fail. And the resilience? Built crude. Every system over-engineered. We won't navigate the instabilities elegantly, but we might muscle through them. Maria looked up. It's going to be rough. Really rough. but I think we can do it. That's not exactly confidence-inspiring, Yuki said. I'm an engineer, not a motivational speaker. We can probably do this. That's as good as it gets. Sarah nodded. Then, we're going in. Kale, tell the stranded ships to prepare for extraction. We'll take them one at a time. Kale transmitted. The responses came back uncertain, hopeful, desperately willing to believe the crude human ship could do what consortium vessels couldn't. The Resilience approached the collapse zone. Kale had seen a lot of impossible things in the last 3 years. This was a new category of impossible. Where fold space should have been smooth transitions between points, the collapse had created chaos, space-time folding into itself, creating pockets where physics argued with itself and lost. The navigational display looked like someone had shattered reality and left the pieces scattered. Christ, Marcus whispered. Multiple instabilities detected. Navigation reported. Confidence in projected route. Low. How low? 30%. Maybe less. We've done dumber things with worse odds, Jimmy said. He didn't sound convinced. Begin approach, Sarah ordered. Slow. Careful. First sign of structural stress, we back out and reassess. The Resilience crept forward. The ship's frame groaned as space-time pressure built against the hull. Warning lights started flashing. Nothing critical yet, just the ship announcing it was working harder than designed. They hit the first instability. Reality twisted. Kale's inner ear screamed. The ship lurched sideways through a direction that shouldn't exist. Alarms wailed. Maria's engineering team was shouting coordinates, adjusting power distribution, rerouting systems on the fly. Hull integrity holding, Maria reported. Barely. That was a minor instability. Define minor, Kale managed. We survived it. They pressed forward. Hit another instability. The ship shuddered, systems flickering, but Maria's redundant engineering held. Backups kicked in. Workarounds activated. The Resilience took damage that would have crippled a consortium vessel and kept moving. Target vessel in range, navigation said. First stranded ship. Krell design, crew of 23. Open communications, Sarah ordered. Kale established the link. A Krell voice came through, deep and concerned. Human vessel, you should not be here. These instabilities are too dangerous for another surge hit. The Resilience groaned, twisted, absorbed the impact through sheer structural redundancy. Kale's response was maybe 30% professional. We're here anyway. Prepare for docking. You cannot dock in these conditions. The instabilities will... We've got magnetic clamps and... Hope, Maria interrupted. We're making this work. Extend your airlock. What followed was controlled chaos. The Resilience matched trajectories with the stranded Krell ship, while reality kept trying to pull them apart. Maria's team performed docking maneuvers that violated every protocol for safety and elegance, but somehow impossibly worked. The clamps engaged. Airlocks aligned. The connection held. Go, Sarah ordered the rescue team. They moved. Quick. Efficient. 23 Krell crossing between ships, their massive forms moving with desperate speed. Kale watched through the internal cameras, counting. 15, 20, 23. Everyone's across. Dr. Osei reported. Sealing airlocks. The Resilience disengaged. Another instability hit. The ship absorbed it, shook it off, kept moving. One down, Sarah said. Two to go. The second ship was worse. Volusian vessel, smaller, caught in a particularly nasty cluster of instabilities that kept shifting position. The approach took 3 attempts, each one pushing the Resilience closer to structural failure. Hull stress at 60% capacity, Maria reported. We could take maybe 2 more hits like that. Can we reach them? Sarah asked. If we stop being careful and start being desperate, do it. The Resilience lunged. Not elegant, not safe, just fast and committed, pushing through instabilities through sheer momentum and redundant systems. The ship screamed. Alarms wailed. Something in the port engine exploded in a way that sounded expensive. Port engine offline, engineering reported. Backups compensating. This is insane, one of the Volusian crew transmitted. You're going to kill yourselves. Not our first time doing something insane, Kale transmitted back. Extend your airlock. They docked. Barely. The connection was unstable, fighting against space-time pressure that wanted to tear them apart. The Volusian crew scrambled across, 14 beings moving with fluid grace even in crisis. The last one was halfway through when the instability hit. The worst one yet. The kind that made previous impacts look gentle. The resilience twisted, hull, plates shrieking, systems failing across multiple redundancies. The docking connection started to tear. We're losing the seal, someone shouted. The Volusian was stuck halfway between ships, caught in an airlock that was trying to become two separate places simultaneously. They were screaming, colors flashing distress signals. Kale didn't need translation to understand. Jimmy moved. Didn't think. Just moved. Crossed into the failing airlock, grabbed the Volusian, hauled them through with strength born from high gravity, evolution, and desperation. The seal failed. The docking connection tore apart. Jimmy and the Volusian tumbled into the resilience. The airlock slammed shut on emergency protocols. Alarms indicated pressure loss, structural damage, and various other problems that meant they were alive but not out of trouble. Everyone okay? Sarah demanded. Define okay. Jimmy wheezed. He was bleeding from somewhere. The Volusian was huddled against the wall, colors cycling through shock patterns. Medical to airlock 3, Sarah ordered. Maria, status? Port engine completely dead. Starboard engine at 40% capacity. Hull integrity compromised in 6 sections. We're operational, but we're not healthy. Maria's voice was tight. We can make one more rescue. Maybe. After that, we need to get out of here before this bucket decides it's had enough. Sarah looked at the tactical display. One ship remaining. Cyric's vessel. The hardest to reach, deepest in the instability field. How bad? She asked. Very, Maria said. We'll have to go through the densest instability cluster. Our chances of maintaining hull integrity through that are not good. Can we do it? Do we have a choice? Sarah was quiet for a moment. Kale watched her calculate, weigh options, carry the weight of command that meant people's lives depended on her decisions. We're going in, she said. One more rescue. Then we go home. The resilience limped toward the final target. The approach was a nightmare rendered in physics. Instabilities everywhere, shifting faster than navigation could track, creating a maze of space-time anomalies that would have been impossible for a consortium vessel to navigate. The resilience didn't navigate it so much as survive it. The ship took hit after hit, shedding systems and non-essential components, losing pieces of itself to keep the core intact. Maria's engineering team performed miracles, rerouting power through tertiary backups, compensating for hull breaches with emergency seals, keeping everything running on sheer, stubborn refusal to accept failure. We're not going to make a clean docking, Maria announced. We've lost too many maneuvering thrusters. Best I can do is get us close and hope they can jump the gap. How close? Sarah asked. 3 meters. Maybe 4. That's not close. That's what we've got. The Cyric ship came into view. Small, elegant, completely helpless in the instability field. The crew was broadcasting on emergency channels, their collective consciousness fragmenting from stress and fear. We see you, Kale transmitted. We're going to get close. You'll need to cross the gap manually. The Cyric's response came back fractured. We cannot. Our coherence is failing. We cannot maintain formation across vacuum. Damn. The Cyrics were a collective consciousness distributed across hundreds of individual organisms. In normal conditions, they could coordinate perfectly across distances. Here, with space-time instabilities disrupting their connection, they were losing coherence. If they tried to cross the gap individually, they'd lose their ability to function as a unified consciousness. Ideas. Sarah asked the crew. We could extend a physical tether, Marcus suggested. Give them something to hold on to, maintain connection while crossing. We don't have time to fabricate a tether, Maria said. Then, we use what we have. Yuki was already moving. Cable from the cargo bay. It's rated for structural loads. If we string it between ships, do it, Sarah ordered. Fast. They worked. The resilience matched velocity with the Syrinx ship. Not perfect, the instabilities kept pulling them out of alignment, but close enough. Close enough to be terrifying. The cargo bay doors opened. The cable launched, magnetic grapple catching on the Syrinx ship's hull. Connection established, Yuki reported. Not exactly protocol, but it's attached. Syrinx crew, you have a crossing route, Kale transmitted. Follow the cable. Stay connected. The Syrinx began to move. Hundreds of small organisms flowing along the cable like living liquid, maintaining their collective consciousness through physical contact with each other and the cable. It was beautiful, terrifying, desperate. They were halfway across when the instability hit. The big one. The kind that made everything before it looked gentle. Space-time folded inside out. The resilience lurched, systems screaming, hull plates tearing. The cable connection strained. Started to fail. No, Yuki said. She was at the cargo bay airlock. No. The magnetic grapple was losing cohesion. The cable's starting to slip. Marcus moved. Crossed into the cargo bay, grabbed the manual winch controls, started hauling the cable in with strength amplified by desperation and Earth's 0.9 gravity, making him strong enough to do things most species couldn't. Pull, he shouted. Everyone pull. The engineering team joined him. Humans straining against space-time pressure, pulling a cable that was trying to tear itself apart, dragging the Syrinx collective across a gap that kept trying to become infinite. They pulled. The Syrinx flowed into the cargo bay. Hundreds of organisms tumbling through the airlock in a cascade of desperate survival. The last few were still on the cable when it finally failed, magnetic grapple tearing free, the connection breaking. But they were close enough. The last organisms jumped, propelled themselves across the final meter through collective effort, crashed into the cargo bay in a pile of relieved existence. Seal the bay, Sarah ordered. The airlock slammed shut. The Syrinx crew coalesced, reforming their collective consciousness now that they were in stable environment. Their response came through as waves of gratitude and profound relief. Everyone accounted for? Sarah asked. Dr. Osei was checking. Counting. All 3 ship crews present. We have minor injuries, major stress, and what I think is collective trauma for the Syrinx, but everyone's alive. Then, get us out of here, Sarah told Maria. Whatever it takes. Whatever it takes is going to be ugly, Maria warned. We can't navigate back through the instabilities. We're too damaged. We'll have to punch straight through and hope we don't come apart. Do it. The resilience turned. Not elegantly. More like a wounded animal deciding to fight rather than die. The engines, what remained of them, fired at maximum output. The ship accelerated straight toward the densest part of the instability field. This is insane, Marcus said. Completely, Sarah agreed. The ship hit the field at full burn. Reality screamed. So did the resilience. Systems failed in cascading waves. Hull breaches opened. Entire sections of the ship tore away. But Maria's redundant engineering held. Every failed system had a backup. Every backup had a workaround. Every workaround was being implemented by an engineering team that had trained for catastrophic failure. They punched through. The instabilities fell away behind them. Stable spacetime embraced the resilience like an old friend. The ship coasted on momentum and hope, bleeding atmosphere and structural integrity, but fundamentally intact. We're clear, navigation reported. We're clear, and we're alive. The cargo bay erupted in cheers. Humans and aliens celebrating survival in equal measure, species barriers dissolving in shared relief. Damage report, Sarah requested. Maria laughed. It sounded slightly hysterical. Where do I start? Port engine completely destroyed. Starboard engine operating at maybe 20%. Hull integrity compromised in 34 sections. Life support running on tertiary backups. We've lost 2 cargo modules, the primary communications array, and most of our redundant systems. Can we make a home? We can make it to the nearest consortium station. After that, The Resilience is going into dry dock for about 6 months of repairs. Assuming we decide she's worth repairing. She brought everyone home, Sarah said. She's worth repairing. Kale opened communications with Consortium Command. This is Resilience. Mission successful. All stranded crew recovered. Requesting assistance to reach the nearest station. The response came back from a Consortium coordinator who sounded genuinely shocked. Confirmed. Resilience. We have recovery vessels en route. Your performance has been unexpected. That's very human, Kale replied. Indeed, the recovery vessels met them 6 hours later. The Resilience was towed to the nearest Consortium station, a massive orbital facility that made Earth's largest structures look primitive. The rescue crews were transferred to proper medical care. The human crew was checked, treated, and cleared for debriefing. Sarah stood in the station's observation deck, looking at the Resilience docked in the repair bay. The ship was a wreck, hull scarred, systems offline, barely recognizable as the vessel that had left Earth 48 hours ago. Vel found her there. You did it, Vel said. Their colors were doing something complicated that Kale had learned to recognize as respect. The Council did not believe you would succeed. Many expected you to fail spectacularly. You proved them wrong. We just did what we had to do, Sarah said. 3 ships needed rescue. We had the only vessel that could reach them. No, you had the only species stubborn enough to try. Vel moved closer. The Consortium has protocols for everything. Procedures. Elegant solutions to every foreseeable problem. But when fold space routes collapse, when space-time destabilizes, when the universe presents challenges we did not foresee, we struggle. Our elegant ships fail. Our optimized systems cannot adapt. And we succeed because we're crude, Sarah said. You succeed because you build for catastrophe. You assume things will fail, and you prepare for it. Your engineering is redundant because you expect redundancy to be necessary. Your crews train for impossible scenarios because you assume the impossible will happen. Vel's color stilled. This is what the Council fears. And what the Council needs. Sarah was quiet for a moment. What happens now? Now the Council votes. Again. But this time, the question is not whether to grant you provisional membership. The question is whether to grant you full membership immediately, 3 years ahead of schedule. Because we pulled off one rescue. Because you demonstrated the exact capability the Consortium lacks. We are old, Commander Chun. We are established. We are very good at maintaining stability. But we have forgotten how to handle instability. You have not. You thrive in it. Velpost. There will still be opposition. But after today, that opposition will be questioned. Sarah looked at her crew, scattered through the station. Exhausted. Injured. Absolutely convinced they'd just done something impossible. We're not perfect, she said. Perfect is not required. Useful is required. Adaptable is required. Willing to attempt the impossible when it needs attempting. That is required. Vel's colors flickered. You're all of these things. It makes you dangerous. It also makes you valuable. The Council vote happened 3 days later. Kale watched from Earth. The proceedings broadcast across every human network, every alien communication channel. The debate was intense. The rescue was used as evidence by both sides. Proof of human capability and proof of human recklessness. The Krell spoke first. 3 years ago, I proposed granting the humans provisional membership. I was questioned, opposed, told that humans were too unpredictable, too violent, too crude to function in the Consortium. Today, those same qualities saved 72 lives that our elegant vessels could not reach. I now propose we grant them full membership. Not in 7 years as planned. Now, the Veldar faction countered. They succeeded through luck and desperation, not skill. They destroyed a ship in the process. They violated every safety protocol. They saved everyone. The Syrinx interrupted. Their collective voice was firm. We were dying. Our consciousness fragmenting. We called for help, and the Consortium had no answer. The humans answered. With a crude ship and desperate courage, but they answered. That means something. The debate continued. Kale stopped trying to follow every argument and just watched the vote counts update. The numbers were close. Too close. Then, species started changing their positions. The rescued crews testified. The Krell described human engineering with grudging respect. The Volusians spoke about human adaptability. The Syrinx praised human willingness to attempt the impossible. The vote concluded, 12-4 in favor. Full membership granted. Earth erupted. Celebrations in every city, every settlement, every human habitat from Mars to the outer stations. They'd done it. Not just passed the trials, not just survived the evaluation period, but proven themselves valuable enough to accelerate the timeline. Kale found himself crying. Just standing in the Geneva Operations Center, watching the numbers update, crying like an idiot because humanity had just been accepted into something larger than themselves. Sarah was beside him, also crying. They didn't say anything, just stood there being human together. Marcus found them an hour later. The UN is calling it the greatest diplomatic achievement in history. The UN is being dramatic, Sarah said. The UN is correct. Marcus pulled up another display. We've been offered seats on 3 different consortium committees. Technology exchange has been fast-tracked. Trade agreements are being revised to give us better terms. And this is the big one. We've been invited to participate in the Frontier Initiative. Kale's brain stuttered. The Frontier Initiative? The exploration program for uncharted space. That's the one. Apparently our talent for surviving impossible situations makes us ideal candidates for going places no one's been before. Marcus grinned. We're being offered a place on the cutting edge of galactic expansion because we're crude and reckless and refuse to quit. That's terrifying, Yuki said. That's perfect, Jimmy corrected. Sarah looked at her team. Her crew, the humans who'd helped prove that their species belonged among the stars. So what do? We accept, Kale said. Obviously, we came this far being terrified and unqualified. No reason to stop now. We'll need new ships, Marcus said. Better ships. Still crude by consortium standards, but functional enough to not fall apart every mission. We'll need trained crews, Yuki added. People who can handle the kind of impossible situations we keep volunteering for. We'll need everything, Sarah said. But we'll figure it out. That's what we do. They stood there a while longer, thinking about the future. About Earth, still chaotic and beautiful and desperately trying to catch up to the reality of being part of something cosmic. About humanity, stubborn and creative and absolutely convinced they could survive anything the galaxy threw at them. About the fact that they'd proven it. 6 months later, Kale stood in the newly commissioned Deep Space Operations Center, watching the first human consortium joint exploration mission prepare to launch. 5 ships, 3 consortium vessels, elegant and optimized, and 2 human ships, better than the resilience but still crude by galactic standards, still built on principles of redundancy and adaptation and controlled catastrophe. The crews were mixed species. Humans working alongside Krell and Volusians and Syrinx and others, all of them trained in protocols that blended consortium elegance with human improvisation. It's really happening, Yuki said beside him. We're actually doing this. Exploring unknown space as equals with species who've been traveling the stars for millennia. We're doing it as partners, Kale corrected. That's different. Better. Sarah joined them, watching the pre-launch preparations. You know what the council said yesterday? They called us the chaos factor. Said we disrupted 17,000 years of established order in 3 years. Is that a complaint? Marcus asked. It was a compliment. Sort of. They said the consortium needed disrupting. That we'd grown complacent, too focused on maintaining what we had rather than pushing into what we could become. Sarah smiled. They said humans reminded them why exploration matters. Why taking risks matters. Why being willing to fail spectacularly sometimes leads to succeeding impossibly. We're a good influence on ancient galactic civilizations, Jimmy said. Who would have thought? Anyone who paid attention to human history, Yuki replied. We've been a chaotic influence on everything we touch. Now we're just doing it in space. The launch countdown began. Kale watched the ships power up, humans and aliens working together, preparing to venture into unknown regions where anything could happen, where everything would probably go wrong at some point, where they'd adapt and survive anyway because that's what they'd always done. Final pre-launch check complete, the operations coordinator announced. All ships ready. Initiating departure sequence in 60 seconds. Kale thought about the last 3 years. About arriving at the proving grounds convinced they'd fail. About passing trials designed for species with millennia more experience. About Sarah's speech before the council, desperate and honest and completely human. About the resilience limping home with 72 rescued crew members and hull breaches in 34 sections. About every impossible thing they'd survived by refusing to accept impossible. You know what the best part is? He said. We proved we're not just good at violence or survival or crude engineering. We proved we're good at trying, at attempting things we probably can't do and figuring it out anyway. That's very human, Sarah agreed. That's very us. The countdown reached 0. The ships launched. 5 vessels carrying the future of human consortium cooperation, headed into uncharted space where they'd face challenges nobody could predict, solve problems nobody had anticipated, and probably break things nobody realized could be broken. Kale watched them go, thinking about how 3 years ago humanity had been alone in their solar system, convinced they were the only intelligent species in existence, building crude ships with hope and duct tape because that's all they knew how to do. Now, they were part of something cosmic. Not because they'd become less human, but because they'd proven being human was exactly what the galaxy needed. Think we'll ever stop being the weird ones? Yuki asked. Absolutely not, Marcus said. We're always going to be the species that builds things wrong and makes them work anyway. That violates every protocol and somehow succeeds. That looks at impossible situations and says, hold my beer. I'm okay with that, Kale said. Me too, Sarah agreed. The galaxy's been doing things the elegant way for 17,000 years. Maybe it's time for some productive chaos. They stood there watching the ships disappear into fold space, carrying humans and aliens together into the unknown, building something new from the combination of ancient wisdom and young stubbornness. Outside the operations center, Earth turned beneath them, blue and green and brown and chaotic. A death world that had forged a species capable of surviving anything by teaching them to expect catastrophe and adapt anyway. A species that had looked at the galaxy's elegant perfection and said, that's nice, but have you considered redundancy? A species that had proven their worth not through elegance or optimization, but through sheer stubborn refusal to accept failure as final. Kale smiled. Somewhere out there, the exploration vessels were already encountering their first problems, already improvising solutions, already proving that human chaos paired with consortium experience created something neither could achieve alone. Welcome to the galaxy, humanity, he said quietly. Try not to break everything. Sarah laughed. No promises. They walked back to operations, ready to coordinate, support, and inevitably rescue the exploration teams when they did something brilliantly stupid. It was going to be a hell of a ride, and they wouldn't have it any other way.